Hey guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com, and in this mini lesson, Matt's going to be teaching you a tune that I wrote, which I'm calling Melody to Harmony. So let me tell you what that actually means. If we think back to the performance we just listened to, it started out with just the melody on its own as single notes. Da 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 da. So that's what we hear the first time around. The second time around that the melody is played, we add a little bit more. We add some double stops, which just means playing two notes at the same time. Then the third time around that we hear the melody, it turns into a full-fledged chord melody. So I thought it would be cool for you all to see how a melody turns into a chord melody. In other words, how it builds and develops. So with that in mind, let's talk about who this lesson is going to be best suited for. And I think that's going to be the intermediate player. So as we know, we've got single notes, we've got double stops, we've got some chords, we've also got some chunks and a little bit of strumming thrown in. So there's a really good mix of playing styles and techniques that really are well suited for the intermediate player. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and take a step back. Let's talk about this lesson. So in this video, Matt's going to be teaching you how to play the entire tune. But if you want to get the tabs to print off and follow along with, that is going to be available at this link. Or you can go to the site, rockclass101.com, do a search for ML26. That is the lesson number for this lesson. And also on that page will be the really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer. Now this is a great feature where you can hit play, you can watch the tab scroll across in real time, you can highlight bars to loop sections, slow it down to any speed you wish, just a great asset in learning this song that much easier. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Matt to teach you how to play this. Don't forget to grab the high G ukulele and I'll catch you at the end of the video.
Hello! Today we're going to learn mini lesson 26. It's a super fun tune that involves a lot of strumming and layering with melody and harmony. And let's go ahead and dive in. Looking at the first part, bringing the camera down, this melody A is going to be a finger pick section. I like to use 3 finger picking, which means my thumb is going to be responsible for my G and C strings, index here on the E string, and middle finger here on the A string. I'm going to start by taking my fretting hand and barring it across the 2nd fret over all 4 strings to play that 2nd fret on the G, and then the 2nd fret on the A as well. Then I'm going to add this pinky finger here to 5 for the 5th, and then I'm going to play the 2 on the G to finish this measure. A little syncopation there, it's at the and of 4. And so what that sounds like in time is something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into the 2nd measure here, we're going to keep this bar on, take the pinky off though, play the 2nd fret of the A string, then the 2nd fret of the E string, and then the 2nd fret of the G string. And that's why we're barring it here, is it just makes it easy to play all these melody notes. So in time, the 2nd measure is something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into the next measure here, it's a simpler version of the first measure. Still holding that bar across 2. Quick tip, if you're struggling to maintain that bar, make sure you get right up next to that fret wire and make sure that you don't just squeeze with the thumb, but you also kind of pull back with the finger a little bit. It helps to pull this way in addition to squeeze with the thumb. And then we're going to play the 2 on the G there, 2 on the A, and then add the pinky back on 5. Just like measure 1, only this time the measure's done. That's all there is to it. And in time, it should sound like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then going into the 4th measure here, we can take the bar off. It's totally fine to do that right here. If you're comfortable holding the bar and doing a bit of a stretch, the pinky finger is going to go to 7 on the A string. So I'm going to pluck that 7, and then I'm going to slide it back down to 5. And again, if you're comfortable, you can hold the bar there as you do this. Pretty straightforward measure. In time, 4 should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And so that you can hear it, here's this 4-bar phrase played all together. It should be something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into the next group of 4 bars, this is actually the same with harmony added. Harmony just means we're playing extra notes along with the melody. You'll notice that now, instead of just playing 1 note at a time, sometimes we'll play 2 notes. Let's go ahead and look at it. We're gonna hold the bar there, same thing we did before, same 2 on the G, same 2 on the A. But then when we play this 5 on the A, instead of just playing that like we did in measure 1, we're gonna play that and the 2 on the G simultaneously. That gives us that harmony that just sounds so sweet. And then we're gonna play just the 2 on the G, just like we did in the previous set. So in time, measure 5 sounds like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going on to the 6th measure here, it's gonna be very similar, but we're gonna add an extra note. Still barring there across the 2nd fret. If your finger's getting sore doing this, look at all those lines on mine, right? It's okay to shake it out, take a little break. It's hard to learn these types of tunes sometimes because there's so much work in just holding the bar for so long. It's okay to take breaks. But what you're gonna do to start measure 6 is take that middle finger, add it on the 3rd fret of the E string while maintaining the bar. And then I'm gonna pluck the E and the A together. So it's that 3 and that 2. And then I'm gonna take the middle finger off, pluck the E string. And then I'm going to pluck the G and C strings together. So I'm going to move my index finger up here to the C string, pluck it with the thumb and index. So in time, 6 sounds like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. It's really a cool sound, getting that harmony going. Going in the 7th measure, it's exactly the same as the 3rd measure, which is. And the 8th measure is exactly the same as the 4th measure. Identical. So what that means is measures 5, 6, and 7, and 8 are the same rhythmic hits as 1, 2, 3, and 4, but adding some harmony on 5 and 6, and then playing the same on 7 and 8. And it should sound something like this when you play 5, 6, 7, and 8 all together. 2 and 3 and 4 and. So now from here we go on to measure 9. And measure 9 is going to be very similar to the other measures, but it's going to start incorporating some strumming as well. This is just a layered approach that sounds really nice. We're going to start by still holding that same bar, so if your finger's getting sore, again, important to take a little break. But we're going to play the 2 on the G, 2 on the A. And then we're going to take that pinky, add it on 5 of the A string, and we're going to do a down strum here. I like to use my index finger for strumming, right over here over the fretboard meets the body. I call this the sweet spot of strumming. Do my down. And then I'm going to do one of two things. I'm going to do either a chunk, which is a mute with the fretting hand, or excuse me, the playing hand, or I can mute with the fretting hand. We've got videos of both of these things linked in the description, so make sure you check them out if you're not comfortable with it. But the all X's essentially mean to mute, either with a chunk or with a mute. And after we do that down on the mute, you'll see it's an up strum just on 0A. Well, all that I'm doing there is I'm bringing the hand up. I'm just kind of catching the A string. If I hit the E string a little bit in there, totally fine. No big deal at all. But what I'm doing is I'm taking the hand off to set up what comes next. And we'll talk about what comes next in just a moment. But looking at measure 9 on its own should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into measure 10 now, we're going to go to a G chord. I like to play the G chord with my index finger here on the C string, my ring finger here on the E string, and my middle finger here on the A string, 2, 3, and 2. Make sure you get those fingertips right up next to the fret wires, and we're going to do a down strum here. And then we're going to bring the hand back up, and we're going to do a chunk or a mute. I like to do a chunk here. And then we're going to come up on a D chord. Now to play this D chord, It's a little tricky, but we're going to use just our index finger on the second fret of the G, C, and E strings. And the way we do that is if you look at your finger, you've got that joint crease right there. You see where the joint bends, right? I'm going to put my E string right in that. And what that does is it lets me come off the A string. See how I'm at 1, 1, 1, but then open off the A string? It's a tricky thing to work on, but really worthwhile endeavor because playing a D chord like this really opens up a lot of other doors. And so I'm going to do an up strum on this D chord. I'm going to miss going down. I'm going to do another up strum on this D chord. And then I'm just going to take these other 3 fingers that are free. I'm going to lightly touch the ukulele. I'm going to do 2 mute strums, both on a down and on an up. We can't do the chunk here because we can't really chunk up. We can do down chunks, but we can't do up chunks. So the mute is preferred with that at the end of measure 10. And so measure 10 ends up looking something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into measure 11, we're going to hold that bar across 2, play 2 on the G, 2 on the A. Then we're going to play that full D chord, the 2, 2, 2, 5 with the pinky here, just like we did before, down strum. Bring the hand back up. And then we're going to do a muted down and up. So we just soften our grip on these strings. So it's just lightly touching. And we're going to go mute, mute. So you see I'm doing that on both the down and the up. So in time, measure 11 is something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going into the 12th measure here, we got to slide this up. We're going to go to this awesome E minor chord. Index finger is going to slide up to fret 7 and down off the G string. So we're going to only bar the C, E, and A strings right here at our 7th fret, right where that dot is. And when we do this, we're going to do a down strum. And then we're going to bring the hand back up before doing a chunk here. I like to do the chunk because then my fretting hand doesn't have to worry and it gives it time to slide back down to the 2, 2, 2, 5 for this D chord, because right after this chunk, you can see here on measure 12, it comes up on a D chord. So really important to do that. And from this point, what I'm going to do is a miss and then another up strum, and then I'm going to mute and mute. It's really important with these two to do those mutes, which is going to be in the fretting hand, just getting really comfortable with releasing the pressure so that you get this muted sound, right? Sometimes we like to do the chunk, other times the mute. It just depends on the context. In this case, the mute gives us that down and that up. So in time, measure 12 should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And remember, keep the hand moving down and up with strumming, and you'll have a good time keeping rhythm. But at this point now, we want to hear what 9, 10, 11, and 12 sound like, and you'll actually notice there's a repeat marker with this too. Measure 12 is what we call the first ending. Measure 13 is going to be the second ending. Now, before we go on to measure 13, let's go ahead and hear what 9, 10, 11, 12 sound like, and I'm going to do the repeat as well, so that you can hear what it sounds like played twice before we stop at measure 13. Should be something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Let's go and take a look at 13 and 14 and see what these look like. We're going to start with that same E minor, doing the down strum there. Follow that with a miss coming up and then a chunk. And then the up on 2, 2, 2, 5 for the D. Miss coming down, another up there, and then another chunk. And then we're going to come up again on this D. That's where it's different than measure 12. Before we did a mute, mute. This time we're doing a chunk up for the last 2 beats. And in time, 13 should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and. And going into the 14th measure, only 2 beats here. Nice little breakup. We're going to do a miss to start. We're going to come up, and we're going to do a chunk, and then an up on our G chord. Now, last time we played a G chord, we did it like this, right? We did index, ring, and middle just like this. With this G chord though, we want to bar across the 2nd fret of the C, E, and A and add the middle finger here on the 3rd fret of the E string. Now, you don't know why yet, but you will when we go on to melody B, so just trust me for now. So measure 14 sounds like this in time. 2 and 3 and 4 and... Remember, that one's only 2 beats in there. So that measure 13 and 14 has a really cool sound. It sounds something like this when you play it all together. 2 and 3 and 4 and... And this wraps up melody A of the song. Now, before going on to melody B, let's go ahead and hear what melody A sounds like all the way through. So this is going to be measures 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Repeat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, and 14. Lots of stuff. Let's go ahead and give it a go. Should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now, from this point, at the end of 14, it's going on to melody B. And what's really important about this is realizing that 14 is kind of the start of melody B in some ways because of that G chord. It makes it kind of hard sometimes to hear that melody 13, or excuse me, measure 13. Because you want it to go right down into this G chord so badly. And that's where we start with measure 15 on melody B. We're going to be doing a down strum on that G chord. Remember I mentioned to use these 2 fingers instead? And the reason here is we're going to do the down, and then we're going to do a chunk and up, and then we're going to come up again, and then chunk, and then up on the 5. And this is why we're doing it. It's a lot harder to stretch the 5 from here. So by using these, it sets that up. We're going to come up on that 5. And this is what this melody does. Melody B has a lot of jumping the beat, which means we're going to play the chord on the up strum at the end of a measure. And so it makes it kind of hard to learn at first because you're playing to the end of the measure, and sometimes it can help to play 2 measures at a time or even 3 or 4 measures at a time to really get that feel. But 15 should sound something like this in time. 2 and 3 and 4 and... Going right into 16, we're going to do a down, chunk up, up, chunk. See, it's the same rhythm that we just did in 15. And then we're going to switch to the D chord, same way that we played it before with our index finger barred across the G, C, and E strings. We're going to come up. So that pattern is the same in 15 and 16. It's sort of down, chunk, up, chunk, up, with the chord change happening on the last up of the measure. So 16 should sound something like this in time. 2 and 3 and 4 and... Going right into 17, we're going to do a down on that D chord. Down, chunk, up, and then we're going to do a mute, mute. So it's a little different there on 17. Starts with the same down, chunk, up, and then we're going to finish with mute, mute. So in time, 17 sounds like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and... And going right into the 18th measure. This is a nice little breakup, some melodic picking. So we're not going to strum on 18. We're going to hold that 2. We're going to play the G string, then play the A string, and then we're going to play 4 on the A with the ring finger, and then we're going to hammer on with our pinky to 5 on the A. If If you've never done this before, there's a video linked down below on hammer-ons. Definitely check it out. But make sure you're using more the tip of the finger and really the pad. You want to make sure that you're not too sideways with this or it's not going to create a good sound. And then after we do the hammer-on there, we're going to pull off by plucking the string with that pinky finger. Tricky section. Then we're going to play 2 on the A by taking the ring off, 2 on the G, and 2 on the E. Love this measure. Should sound something like this in time. 2 and 3 and 4 and... And from this point, it repeats. So let's go ahead and hear what that sounds like. I'm going to play measures 15, 16, 17, and 18. Should be something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and... And then from here, it repeats, goes back to. But now we go on to measure 19 instead of measure 17. And measure 19 looks very similar because, well, it is. It's actually exactly the same as measure 17. We're going to do our same down, chunk up, mute, mute. It's exactly the same. 19 and 17 are identical. In time, it sounds like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and... But then 20 is different. Where 18 we did the... In 20, we're going to play this altered G chord. This is a little tricky. Ring finger here on the 4th fret of the G string. Index finger here on the 2nd fret of the C string. Middle finger here on the 3rd fret of the E string. And our A string is going to be muted by this index finger just hugging the A string. The reason for this is so that we can get this sort of melody note of the G. If you have the A a little bit open, it's no big deal. It's totally fine. But we want to mute it. We're going to do a down up on this chord. And we're going to do a chunk. And then we're going to come up on an A chord. So index finger here on the 2nd fret, or excuse me, 1st fret on the C string, middle finger here on the 2nd fret of the G. We're going to do an up here, and we're going to try to miss the A string. So the way we do that is our index kind of starts in the space between. We can just kind of do this. See, I kind of wedge the finger in between the E and the A and come up. And I'm going to do another up, adding the 2 on the E string. And then I'm going to go 3 on the E and do a down strum. If you hit the A string here, no big deal. But I'm trying to focus most on the E string to get that sound. And that measure, really tricky because of the directional strumming. It's totally fine if you just hit the A string a bit in there. The gist will still come through. But it should sound something like this in time. 2 and 3 and 4 and... And so that you can hear it, here is 19 and 20 for that full second ending. Should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and... And then what you'll also notice is there's a little fermata here because we're supposed to hold it. And this wraps up the melody B section. So that we can hear it though, let's hear 15, 16, 17, 18, repeat 15, 16, 19, 20. Should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and... You hear I hit the A string a little bit in there. Again, totally fine as you're playing this. But at this point, we go to the coda. So how this works is we're going to basically go back to measure 1. And we're going to play melody A all the way through again. We're going to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we're going to jump to 21 and 22 to end the song. So let's go ahead and hear what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sounds like going into there. It should be like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and... And now we go on to measure 21. We're going to start off with the same 2 on the G, 2 on the A. And then we're going to move up to the spicy G minor chord. Ring finger here on the 7th fret of the C string, middle finger here on the 6th fret of the E string, and index finger here on the 5th fret of the A string. We're going to do a down strum on this. And then we're going to finish that measure before we get ahead of ourselves on measure 22. So that should sound like this in time. Measure 21, 2 and 3 and 4 and... Going into the 22nd measure, we're going to play this awesome C7 chord. The way that I like to play this is with my middle, index, and ring fingers. So we have 7, 6, and 7. 7 on the C with the middle, 6 on the E with the index, and 7 on the A with the ring. I'm going to do a down strum here. And it is a dotted quarter, so I basically go down and then miss, miss, missing up, missing down. And then I play a D chord sliding down to the 2-2-2-5 that we've played so many times throughout this. I'm going to do an up strum. So in time 22 should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and... And 21 and 22 for that little ending section should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and... And that is the wrap up for mini lesson 26, bringing the camera back up. Lots of layering, both with harmony by playing multiple notes at the same time and with incorporating strumming. So this is a really wonderful exercise for anyone looking to go from fingerpicking to strumming while learning a really catchy melody along the way. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. I'll look forward to seeing you next time on the next lesson here on Rock Class 101. Thanks so much.
All right, guys, so this mini lesson was a lot of fun. This is a great piece for the intermediate player and a really cool one for looking at how a melody turns into a chord melody. So I want to give you a friendly reminder before we wrap up that if you did want to get the tabs to print off and keep for your records, that is available at this link right here. Or you can go to the site, rockclass101.com, do a search for ML26, that is the lesson number for this lesson. And also don't forget the interactive on-screen tab viewer is on that page. That allows you to hit play, watch the tab scroll across in real time. You can highlight bars to loop sections, slow it down to any speed, all that fun jazz. So guys, again, I hope you enjoyed learning this tune, and we will catch you in the next lesson. Take care.